Authorities in Sleepy Eye have filed charges in connection to a string of attempted burglaries late July. 3 juveniles have been charged with first-degree damage to criminal property following an investigation into the incidents. Sleepy Eye police says they were aware of the group who had allegedly kicked in doors of homes in the southwest area of Sleepy Eye between July 28th and 31st. Investigators executed search warrants and gathered witness accounts before charging the juveniles.